Hello, and welcome to Joline Knits a Lot. I'm Joline, and this is my show about knitting and other things I get up to. How are you? How has your new year been? I have found myself struggling to know what to knit. I want to knit, and I'm excited about starting new things, but I don't know what things I want to pick up and start knitting. Do you ever find yourself in that position where I have mojo, I want to knit, I want to craft, but I don't know what it is I want to make, and I find myself looking through patterns and ideas, and I just haven't been able to find anything that excites me. Does that ever happen to you? In the meantime, while I'm looking for that magical, wonderful project that will spark my imagination and get me excited about knitting, I have been finishing a few things. I think the last time I showed you a pair of mittens that I cast on. This is a pair of the World's Simplest Mittens. It's a great pattern. It's a free pattern by Tin Can Knits, and it's written for a full size range for your whole family, and you can use whatever gauge or weight of yarn you like. I used some fingering weight and Surrey alpaca silk lace weight held together to get a DK weight. And I made these lovely mittens. Oh, you can see I've already been using them. I've got a bit of fluff happening. This yarn is from Lily & Pine. I originally picked it up at the Edmonton Fiber Frolic. These mittens are getting some love. I picked it up at the Edmonton Fiber Frolic in November with the intention of making my mom a pair of mittens, which I did, but I had lots of yarn left over, and so I made myself a pair of mittens as well. This is the adult small. I made one size smaller than the pair I made my mom. And these ones fit me quite nicely. As you can see, they're snug without being too snug. The thumbs are just the right size, which is really a nice part of making your own mittens. And they're soft and lovely. They have a nice long cuff, and they have been getting a lot of action while I drive my kids to their various activities, or to school, or just drive around. They're really lovely mittens. They're not like a super heavyweight mitten, but they are warm. So if you don't live where I live, or in a place that has wide variations in temperature, you might not know that it is a good idea to have different weights of mittens that you can wear throughout the winter. In Edmonton, where I live, winters can be long, but they can also be quite varied in temperature. For example, this past week we had a couple days where the high was minus 25 degrees Celsius, and then we had some days, I believe yesterday got up to +6. So which is above the freezing point. So you need like really warm stuff for when it's really warm, and you need slightly lighter stuff on the days when it's not so cold out, especially when you have a dog to walk. So these mittens will come in handy, and I have been using them quite a bit. The color I used is Rose Petals, and I used their Daylily sock and their Dandelion lace weight in the same color. So that is one project off the needles, and another project for the hashtag Maker's Dozen Knit Along. The Maker's Dozen 2022 Knit Along is hosted on Instagram by Haberdashery. If you use the hashtag Maker's Dozen 2022 to indicate those projects that you have been making throughout the year that were either whips started last year, or projects made from stash that you purchased before the start of 2022, then you could be in for a prize. I love this knit along partly because I love being involved in stuff, and partly because I have been trying to knit from my stash as much as I can lately. I love my stash and I don't mind adding to it, but I also want to work through some of the yarns I've had for a long time, and this is a really good opportunity for me to do that. So this yarn wasn't in my stash for very long, but it still qualifies for the Maker's Dozen 2022 Knit Along. In the last couple of weeks, I finished another project, which I'm not sure if you saw or not. I think I talked about them, but I finished some Shorty Socks. These socks were leftovers from the socks that I made, the DK weight vanilla socks that I made from Ginger Snap's squishy DK sock base. I had enough left over to make another shorty pair of socks, And I was going great guns until I got to the toes and I realized I wasn't gonna have enough to finish the toes. I had enough of the main color to finish each sock to the toe. And then I remembered I had this yarn left over from my mittens, which seemed to go quite nicely with my other sock yarn. And so I finished off the socks with some sock yarn and Surrey Alpaca Silk held double. So these socks have fuzzy toes. I used the squishy DK leftovers that I had for a cuff, and I used the contrast color that I had, and I used it until it was all gone. And then I immediately started a heel flap and gusset, as you can see. And then I knit down the length of the foot, and I had enough yarn to get to the toe, at which point I switched to the sock yarn with Surrey Alpaca, and I finished them off. I have a feeling that my daughter will be stealing these socks. My oldest daughter is a big fan of Shorty Socks, but she also likes a nice gushy sock. She's the dancer, and she likes to put these kinds of socks on her feet after she finishes a dance class because I think she finds them quite cozy. It will be interesting to see how these toes wear. I've never made socks with a Surrey Alpaca silk. I would think that the silk content would make them quite strong, but the fluff from the alpaca may come off. So we'll see how they pill and how they wear. But I'll be offering her to these when she gets home from school today. And that is just a shorty little pair of socks. I used the same numbers as I did for the DK Weight vanilla sock pattern. That is a free pattern by the Crazy Sock Lady. And I'd encourage you to check it out if you're looking for a DK Weight sock pattern. It's super simple, easy to follow, has everything you need in it. So I used those numbers and I just did basically no leg. I knit the ribbing and then I knit the heel flap and gusset. And that is another project for the Makers Dozen 2022 knit along. So I've been really enjoying using up scraps of yarn. I was really happy I could use that fuzzy yarn for the toes of these socks. How about you? Are you liking using your stash? What do you use with your scraps? I often have leftover yarn that I don't know what to do with, especially like sock yarn I can use for things like my crochet blanket, or I can use for heels, cuffs, and toes for other socks. But when you have different weights of yarn, like DK or worsted, what do you do with the little leftovers? Comments? Concerns? There's always little bits of yarn left over, and I would like to be able to use them. So let me know if you have any great ideas on scrappy projects for things that are different weights than fingering weight. Thank you. Now, I was on a bit of a mitten kick, and I decided I wanted to make some colorwork mittens. So I went stash diving. I was a little bit inspired by the Grocery Girls. Tracy had knit Jody a pair of mittens for Christmas, and she used this pattern. It's the Evia pattern by Skein-Deer Knits. I love Skein-Deer's patterns. I love the traditional Norwegian nature of them. I love her approach to knitting that is not quite so precise. She often will use one yarn for different gauges, depending on what needle size you want and the type of fabric you're looking for. And I like that approach to knitting. So I had a look at the pattern, the Evia pattern, and I wanted to make it. So I went into my stash and to see what I had. I pulled out this skein of yarn that I purchased at the very last Knit City that I went to. This is some yarn dyed by Ancient Arts. Ancient Arts is a fiber dyeing company out of Calgary, Alberta. And this was in the Lasco wool base, and it was in a seconds bin, so it was on sale because it had a couple knots in it. Knots don't necessarily scare me very much. I tend to just untie them and then weave those ends in at the end of my project, so that's not a big deal as long as there aren't a ton of knots that I have to deal with. Then I needed a second yarn, a contrast color to go with this color, which is kind of a almost plummy brown color. Originally, I picked a skein of what I thought was a worsted weight. It was a heavy worsted weight, cream color, And I started knitting, and I just found that the cream was too heavy for this as a solid main color. Now, often in color work, you can mix different weights of yarn, and that's not a problem as long as they're somewhat close, but these two just weren't playing nicely together. So I frogged that and I went stash diving again. And I came up with this little remnant of yarn in my ongoing attempt to use up bits and pieces of yarn. I found most of a ball of this DK weight. Oop. This is a yarn that I used to make my Soldotna cropped sweater out of. It is dyed by Poppy Fibers. They are also a dyer from, I believe, wait, maybe I can find out on the tag. Calgary. Calgary has a lot of yarn dyers, it turns out. This is Poppy Yarn and Fiber. I'll show you their tag. This could be an old tag. I picked up this yarn at an Edmonton Fiber Frolic pre-pandemic, so it goes back a little ways. This is the Robson TK weight. It is a 3-ply, 100% 17 micron superwash merino. It is soft, like butter. It is really super silky, and when I used it for my Colorworks Soldotna, it created a really lovely soft fabric, so I knew I could use it for color work. But when I mixed it with this, I found that I was getting sort of funny results, partly because I hadn't knit color work on a small circumference in a while, and so my tension was a bit off, and partly because I just found that the one slippery yarn with the one slightly grippier yarn weren't playing very nicely. So here I have a mitten in progress, and this is what my color work's looking like. It's not terrible, but it is a little bit uneven in spots. I think it's okay. It's not terrible. It's not, I think, what I would, like knowing what I know now, I don't think I would pick this combination again. However, I thought I would give it a try and block it and see what happened. So I did that on the first mitten. Haha, I have one finished. And this is what the first mitten looks like. So with a bit of blocking, I used some mitten blockers that I got a few years ago. I feel like the fabric has evened out quite nicely. It's still slightly uneven in spots, and it's not perfect color work, but for a pair of mittens that I'm gonna wear and that will get a lot of like use and or abuse, I feel like they look pretty good. I'm happy with the color combination. This is what the palm looks like. Ooh, oh, hold on. I think I did a pretty good job with the thumb pickup. And what I really liked about this pattern when I saw it on the Grocery Girls podcast was that this side has got a really lovely like white star motif on what looks like the darker background. And then when you flip it, most of the palm is that cream color, but the thumb is the dark color. And I really liked that. This is a very typical Norwegian pattern where you knit sort of a thumb gusset, and then you put some stitches on hold, then you cast a bunch more on here, and then you knit it up, and then you follow up with knitting the thumb afterwards. Skeindir's patterns are wonderful. I would recommend them to you if you're looking for a colorwork mitten pattern. So that is the first mitten, and maybe we can compare it with the second mitten. So definitely I think the blocking really evened things out and made it a lot more cohesive fabric and a lot more even. So I'm quite happy with how these are turning out, even though in the beginning I wasn't sure about my yarn combination. I still don't think this is something that I would necessarily do in future, but I really wanted to use stash yarns. And I think I have a pretty nice little pair of mittens that I hope don't get stolen right away. My daughters are really bad at stealing things like mittens and socks, which I would be annoyed about if I didn't love knitting so much, because I could just knit another pair. The Evia Mittens by Skeindir, using yarn from Stash. So that's exciting. And can I just say, if you've never met color work mittens, I really encourage you to give these a try. This mitten I started yesterday at about 4 in the afternoon. And I have forgotten how quickly color work can go. It's a small circumference, there aren't that many stitches, and it is a little bit potato chippy in the sense that you just want to keep knitting another round. So they can really go quickly once, if you are a somewhat experienced color work knitter. If you are not an experienced color work knitter, they're a great place to start because they're a small project. You can see instant results. And also, if you're having problems with your gauge like I was in the beginning, it's not so big of a project that you don't mind just ripping it out and starting again. So I would totally encourage you to try colorwork mittens if you are new and or experienced colorwork knitter. And I would encourage you to check out Skein Knits patterns because she has many mitten patterns in different weights, some more beginner friendly than others. So check her out if you're in the market for some colorwork mittens. And finally, I have been working on my stripes. This pattern I have been wanting to knit since it came out. I just love horizontal stripes. I think they're so cute. I love a good colorful sweater. And so I started the stripes, which I showed you last time. Last time I think I was just working down the body. Well, I have completed the body, as you can see. Bloop. I opted to knit the longer version of the sweater, which is for a 13-inch length from armpit to waist. So that's what it looks like. I did have some questions about how I was going to know if I would have enough yarn for all the stripes for my sleeves once I finished the body. That's the end of the body. And that's a great question. I have a kitchen scale at home that I have been using to weigh my balls of yarn at certain points in the project to see if I would in fact have enough. I weighed all of these yarns after I had finished 2 body stripes. So for example, here's one body stripe of this sort of beigey color and here's another one. And then I weighed that skein of yarn. I did that for all of them. And for each skein, I had only used about maybe 20 grams for each total for those colors. So about 10 grams for a body stripe. So after I had finished 2 stripes, I knew that I still had like 37 grams-ish of most of these skeins left, which is a fair amount considering it's a 57 gram ball to begin with. So then I knit the sleeves and I weighed each ball of yarn after I had knit a couple of sleeve stripes, and I have over 20 grams left of each color. So I am very confident that I will have enough to finish a second sleeve. I knit the full length sleeve for me on this sweater. And I say for me because I have relatively short arms. I'm always rolling things up. Partly I think because I don't necessarily like to wear my sleeves really long on my hands. Some people do. I don't necessarily like that. And I just legitimately have short arms, which I think I've told you before. So I knit this sweater and I knit, I think 15 stripes. And then I did the ribbing at the cuff. Ooh. So for me, this is a full length sleeve. For your results may vary. But as you can see, if I hold this sweater up, ooh, it just hits me right at the wrist, and I haven't blocked it yet. So I'm happy with the body length, and I'm also happy with the sleeve length. On sleeve number 1, and I have just begun sleeve number 2. I'm on like the second stripe. Again, this project has been very potato chippy, I think because you're constantly changing colors. And that's, if you like the colors you're using, it's a delightful project. I think that I should have this second sleeve finished shortly. And then I'll have this really great stripy fun sweater to wear, which I'm really looking forward to. I plan on wearing it, I think, with jeans, but I also have some linen dresses that I think I could layer it over with leggings. And I am gonna have some leftovers. So then the question becomes what to do with my leftovers. I have some tentative plans. I always have plans. The question is, when do I get to those plans? So I did purchase enough of this yarn to make a second striped sweater for someone, not me, in a very different kind of color palette. More greens, like foresty greens, that kind of thing, for somebody else. And then my thought was I would just keep all of these little balls of yarn that I have left over, and I do have several, some bigger than others. Here's my beige that I have left, and this is probably one of the ones I've used the most of, and I only have to do one more stripe with this. So I will have a fair size nugget left. And originally I was thinking I would save up all of these balls of Recollect that I have left over, including the yarn I have left over from my husband's Hide and Peak sweater and the other sweater that I plan on making, which is also a stripes. I'm sure you'll see it at one point. So my plan is just to kind of gather them all together. And I was thinking what I could do is just make a really big, kind of wide scarf with stripes, maybe like 4-row stripes of each color, and just sort of have it be like a crazy colored scarf. That's option 1. Option 2 for my leftovers is the sea glass sweater, which has just recently been released on Ravelry. And I'll pop a picture right here. The sea glass sweater uses scraps of DK weight yarn. And you can use light and dark shades to create this really interesting colored sweater. Now, the question will be if I will have enough leftovers to make that sweater. If I do, then that's a possibility. Or I might just make a scarf with all of the leftovers. I don't know, what do you think? Comments, concerns. I'm kind of interested in making that sea glass sweater, but I'm not sure how all of the colors will play together. But I guess that's part of the beauty of the sea glass sweater, is just to like throw all of your yarn in a big basket and just go for it and be brave. And part of me wants to do that. But part of me thinks stripy scarf sounds nice too. What do you think? Let me know. I'll have to knit that second striped sweater for somebody else in my life, and then see how much I have for leftovers and what is a realistic project for all of those leftovers. But let me know. Let me know what you think. I'm so excited to see how projects, you know, when a pattern comes out on Ravelry or on Instagram or wherever, and it's brand new and it's beautiful, and it's sometimes hard to picture the different color variations or different size options, or the different just the different ways that people can interpret a knitting pattern. And so sometimes I like to wait and see what other crafters have made and be inspired by their projects. Sometimes I see a beautiful colorwork pattern and it's vibrant and lovely. And then over time, knitters will make it in a very monochromatic way, and it's equally stunning. And it's just the way that they've pictured that pattern. So part of me thinks maybe I'll wait and see, be inspired by other people's sea glass sweaters as they come out. I do want to knit that second striped sweater for somebody, and then I'll see what I have for leftovers and how they all look together. But that is a very real possibility. But in the end, that's a long way to say I have one sleeve left on my striped sweater, and then I will be done. So I'm excited for that, because this is a sweater that I've really wanted to wear. So I'm excited for the finished project. So here I am. I'm almost done my sweater. I have had little projects on the needles, but I'm just not sure what it is I want to knit next. Once the stripes is done, I don't think I necessarily want to knit that second stripes right away. I have yarn where I could make a lovely cable sweater. That's a possibility. I'll pop a picture of the pattern here. This is a pattern from Lane magazine, and I love Lane magazine. I have nearly every issue because I love their aesthetic and I love their patterns. I have knit several of them, and I have the issue that this pattern was in, so I have the pattern and I have some yarn I could use. So maybe it's time for a cabledy sweater. But part of me thinks, oh, maybe more color work would be nice. I don't know. I'm in a pickle. I want to knit. I just don't know what I want to knit. Does that ever happen to you? I'm planning on finishing. I have a little bit of time because I have to finish the sleeve of this sweater and I have a mitten to finish. And then I need to find my next project. I do have a plan. I'm going to a local yarn store tomorrow because I have a couple of gift cards that I got for Christmas and for my birthday, which happened recently. So I'm thinking I'll just go and see what inspires me and see if there is a new yarn or maybe a pattern book that's come out that I can be inspired by. I do have that cabled sweater, which I could knit and I think would be lovely, but it's just not like grabbing me and saying, knit me right now. So we'll see. We'll see what happens at the yarn store tomorrow. In the meantime, I do have a little bit of knitting and a little bit of yarn that I could work through. Speaking of my birthday, I did get another little gift that I wanted to share with you because I think it's really cute and I think it'll be a fun project to work on. My husband and I both share birthdays that are 2 days apart, and they happen in the middle of January. So this year for my birthday, I received this little kit. Isn't it cute? Can you see it? Is it focusing? It is the Industrious Octopus. Oh, it's so cute. This is a kit by Hook, Line, and Sinker. They are located in Nova Scotia, which is on the east coast of Canada, in Ketch Harbor. And they donate 5% of their profits to help women and children experiencing homelessness. I love a good pattern or kit that gives back. Lately, I've been doing mostly cross stitch because that's my comfort zone. That's what I know how to do. This little kit is for more of an embroidery approach, and it's got some stitches I think that I haven't done before, but I'm looking forward to giving it a shot. I've been collecting all of these little kits and pictures and embroidery hoop designs, and I haven't really found the right place for them yet, but I have plans, which I'll let you know about when those plans come to fruition. So if I cannot find any inspiration in the knitting store or in my stash, I think what I'm going to do is just pick up something different because a change is as good as a rest. And I might be the Industrious Octopus. So cute and a very, very thoughtful gift. So I'm looking forward to giving that a shot. And that, my friends, is my episode for today. Let me know if you have knitting inspiration or things that you like to do when you're feeling like you might be in a bit of a rut. I hope in the next couple of weeks you find time to do the things you like to do, whether that's knitting or crocheting or embroidery or cross stitch. I know I plan on knitting a lot. Thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.